Welcome back to our podcast series, and this is a podcast on RTI, Right for Information. And the first podcast we covered a lot on RTI and the ideology and idea behind it. And this podcast we'll be covering more on the process and how you can use it day to day. This is Sahityan Ganeshanathan, your host and the question master, who will be navigating today's podcast. But we also have a special guest with us who will be explaining about the system and processes. I will let the guests to explain about their work and where they're coming from and a little bit of bio.
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me and having me here. So I'll just briefly explain who I am. So my name is Nethmi Jinadasa. I serve as the Senior Program Officer at Transparency International Sri Lanka, TISL. So RTI is actually something that we heavily work on. We actually provide free legal services to clients, citizens who reach out to us, and we support them with drafting and submitting right to information applications. So in terms of RTI, we actually do heavily work on strengthening the legal framework, its implementation, and also supporting citizens.
Okay. And you are coming from which background?
So I'm a lawyer myself. I'm an attorney at law.
Okay. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So yesterday, I think the audience really understood about what is RTI itself, and we have been having RTI for 10 years. What are the good sides that we can use RTI, the limitations and the exceptions that what we can use. But today, now everybody want to know like how do we use it, right? What is the real time usage? But before even going into that, like how someone can be prepared to start the RTI application itself. Like now I want to know about something. And where do I start even before the application?
Sure. So I would say, so someone who actually wants to access certain type of information, they need to know what kind of information they want to access. They want to request, basically. As in, it needs to be a specific information. It can't be a general information. It can't be an opinion. It needs to be something solid and specific, because that's how you direct that specific request to the relevant authority, and that's how they can identify what kind of information they should provide to you, right? So I would suggest you do a thorough research on what exactly you need, what kind of information you want to seek, and also make sure that these information that you want to seek are already not within the public domain, right? So it's imperative that you do that research on your own and identify what specific information that you need to seek.
Okay. So how do we know if it's not in the public domain? I know we can, of course, maybe Google it and search it, but then think like it's not accessible enough, or it's not in the language that we use, so then they can still access those.
Yes, absolutely. There's no restriction from requesting information which could already be in the public domain, but you can actually, like you suggested, you can do a simple Google search and go to the website of a certain authority. Now, let's say if you want to know about let's say some procurement process that's been going on, you want to know information. So I would suggest you go to the relevant website of the relevant authority. It could be the ministry website, and just do a simple search and see if whatever information that you're looking for is already in the public domain.
Okay.
Even if you can't access it by a Google search, it doesn't restrict you from filing an RTI application and seeking that information.
Okay. And can you also explain us how broad or how specific information can be?
So that depends actually. So the why I said whatever information that you seek through an RTI application is to be specific is because that will assist the public authority which you direct the request to sort of identify what kind of information they should provide you, right? So let's say I want to submit an RTI request, and what I say is that I want to know how many laws have been passed within the past 10 years.
Okay.
Right? So it's kind of vague, right? So, but then again, I sort of like specify the time limit within the past 10 years. So that actually narrows down. So then the public authority that I'm directing the RTI to can actually go back 10 years and check what are the laws that have been passed within the past 10 years. But if I rephrase the question to say what are the laws that have been passed um, in Sri Lanka. Just a very generic question, right? It doesn't specify a time limit, so it doesn't sort of like support the public authority to identify and provide you the relevant information. So that's why I said it needs to be specific. And also I would suggest reframing the questions. I think we can get to that later in the process, but you can reframe your questions as open-ended questions. It doesn't have to be a yes or no question. It shouldn't ideally be a yes or no question, because that'll not give you sufficient information, right? So if, for example, if you want to know about an application, a permit that you have applied for, right? You can't ask what happened to my permit which I applied for last week. That sort of won't give you the information that you want to get, right? So it could be provide certified copies of the file which contains my application regarding this permit, blah blah blah, right? So that's how you need to be specific in order to get the information that you're actually seeking for.
Okay. So going back to your earlier answer that you said that we can also request like, okay, what are the laws passed in 10 years?
Mhm.
So does it mean that applicant's intent, does it matter, or it can be just any information that I seek? Because what if everyone starts coming and asking about like how we ask ChatGPT now or Google, where we just randomly ask things and they have to, like, it's a system, so it's providing. But of course, this involves a lot of human resources as well. So is it that open-ended where we can just ask anything, or does it intent matters?
So you can ask for information, but so the RTI Act provides for certain limitations. For example, if the information relates to or concerns the national security, if it could have a prejudice to the national economy, or even personal information of someone else, then it's restricted, right? Such information, if you seek from a public authority, they have the right to deny such information, right? So it can't be any information. It can be an information subject to the restrictions laid out in the law.
So that means anything else, still, if I just want to know just as information, and it doesn't need to be like why I need to know it, it just as a citizen, that I just need to know what happened in last 20 years in this particular file, and I can still ask for it.
Yes, so that's actually a really good point, because the RTI law doesn't require the requester, the citizen, to cite reasons as to why such person wants this information, right? Because like I said, I think this would have been discussed in the first episode as well. Right to information is a right. It's an entitlement of the citizens. They have a fundamental right to access such information, right? So they don't need to give reasons or justify as to why they need such information, right? So that is actually a really important point in our Sri Lankan RTI law.
So I think that's good for our viewers also to know, because most of the time we think it's only you will use RTI if you have a need for it,
Yes.
or probably you are working in the field, or you have some kind of supporting argument that you need to make, then you go for RTI. But I think this is a good opportunity for everyone. RTI is just like any tool that you can use it if you just need to access any information that requires and comes under the limitations of it.
Yes.
So that's good to know. So we have now prepared. We know what are the limitations, what we can access, and what are the intent from our side as well. So where do we go now?
Yes. So if we go into the RTI process as laid out in the RTI Act itself, so once you, the requester, the citizen, once you identify what kind of information you want to seek, then the next step would be to basically start reframing your questions, as in like, so it could be just one question, one piece of information that you need, or it could be several information regarding one issue, right? So you need to sort of like, draft the questions so that it captures exactly what specific information you are seeking for. And also it's imperative that you specify, I think I'm reiterating here, but you need to specify the exact timeline if you can provide a timeline. So you can say this information within the period of 2019 to 2026 or 2025 to present, right? So it gives clarity to both yourself and to the public authority to narrow down and give the relevant information, right? So I would suggest you do that first. You do the research. You actually do a basic research as to whether the information you are seeking for is in the public domain, whether it, well, how you should reframe the questions and how you should request this information, and then simply start drafting the questions, right? It doesn't need to be heavily technical, right? So I want to make a point here. So this RTI law is actually citizen friendly. It's not legally heavy, right? So it's sure enough, it's technical, it's a law, but then again the process itself is very straightforward, I would say, right? So the questions you draft in for the RTI application, it doesn't need to be heavily technical. It could be to your understanding, but make sure that it captures the exact information that you want to seek from the authority. That's what I would say.
There is a form.
There is, right? So it's not a compulsory, it's not a mandatory format that you need to follow, but the RTI Commission in their regulations has introduced a format, a template for the RTI request, right? So as long as the information that which the RTI form requires are captured, you're good to go. You can submit that. You can submit your request.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be mandatorily following that template.
And I think the previous speaker also mentioned that this can be submitted um, through a post, email,
Yes,
and as
correct.
well as you can do and hand deliver.
Yes. So the requirement is that the request should be in writing.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be a hard copy. You can hand it over personally to the relevant authority. It could be through an email. It could be even just registered posted. And also, if someone is not comfortable writing in writing, you can actually go meet the relevant information officer in the public authority and tell him or her what your requirement is, what kind of information you want to see, and then make sure the information officer reduce that into writing, a written request, right? So that is also provided in the law itself.
Okay. And this is also accessible to people with different abilities, and also, is it how inclusive this can be?
So on that point, actually, that's a loophole we also see in the law, because it's not entirely inclusive, right? So it doesn't provide for disability access, but it does, like I said, it does provide for an opportunity to give your request orally. But like you said, it's actually a loophole that we see in the law.
Okay. So now we want to fill the form, and of course you said there's few guidelines or maybe key questions that we can have. Can we also know what it looks like? What are the questions? Can you give us some examples of what are the things we will see it in the form?
Yes. So the RTI form, the request form is called RTI 1 form, because there are several other forms also, which I'll probably get into later. So RTI 1 form, which is the request application, it basically asks your full name, your address, telephone number, email address, and whether you are a citizen of Sri Lanka. It's just a yes or no question. And then you need to list out the information that you want to request. So that's essentially it. It's actually, like I said, it's a very simple format. As long as you capture these information in writing, you are good to go with the application.
So all citizens have it. Dual citizens also, yes, I believe.
Yes, as long any Sri Lankan citizen has this right.
Okay.
They can submit an RTI request.
So now we have the application ready, and now we have submitted. So then what happens to the application?
So the RTI application will have to be submitted to someone called the information officer in the relevant public authority, right? So if I go into these information officers, so the RTI Act provides for specific authorities, specific officers who are in charge of implementing this RTI law, right? So they are not brand new officers, brand new recruits for each authority. They are officers of each authority who will be given the designation of being an information officer and a designated officer, right? So the RTI application which you draft and which you submit has to be addressed to this information officer of the relevant public authority, right? So let's say you want to submit an RTI application to the Ministry of Education, then the RTI request should be addressed to the information officer of the Ministry of Education, right? So then that's where the process essentially starts, the RTI process.
Okay. So when you say information officer, so it's someone that fully dedicated only to give information, or do they also do some other role in their portfolio and they have information as a side?
Well, the latter. So they are actually recruited as, officers of that particular ministry. So they have a job to do, and RTI is sort of like an ancillary job that they have to take on. But actually, interestingly, the RTI Act provides that the information officers should prioritize RTI related matters over their other work.
Right.
That's how important the RTI law is. That's how the law itself makes this law very important.
So in the so when you say portfolios and like if it's ministries or officers, how we can picture it? So maybe think like, okay, you said, okay, Ministry of Education has one information officer. So what about departments? What about grammar and Ladari officers? Or I don't know how, like we have like small local, then we have regional, then we have provincial. So how does this whole system works? Like, is it one, many?
So that's actually a good question. So like the RTI Act provides for public authorities, right? It specifically defines what entities come under this definition of public authorities, and it includes ministries, like you said, departments, units within these departments or ministries, educational institutions, some companies where the government holds shares. Likewise, it's a lengthy provision in the law. So all these entities that are regarded as public authorities must have an information officer and a designated officer. So if you take one ministry and it has multiple departments within that ministry, each of these departments should also ideally have a designated information officer and a designated officer.
Okay, that's interesting. So information officer, as you mentioned, who will get this application, try to find that information, try to make sure it's in the due process, and also trying to follow up with the request and all. So what about the designated officer?
Yes. So like I said, when you submit the RTI request to the information officer as the first step of the process, the information officer has to provide, basically give their decision whether they will be giving you information or whether they will be rejecting your application, right? So they have to make a decision. So they have to give that decision to you, the requester, within 14 working days, right? So from that, within that 14 days, they need to provide that decision, and within the next 14 days, if they decide to give you information, within the next 14 days, they have to give you access to those information, right? But if the decision was to reject, not give you information, and if you as the requester are unsatisfied with that decision, then you can make an appeal to the designated officer. So designated officer is above the information officer essentially. So if you are not satisfied with the decision of the information officer, you can appeal it to the high authority, which is the designated officer.
Okay. So just to be clear, so 14 days working days we'll give. Then the information officer will tell us, I can give you or I cannot. But if they are going to give it to me, that means I need to also should wait another 2 more weeks.
Yes, 14 days.
14 days then to get that information, and otherwise I can still appeal to the designated
officer.
Okay.
Correct.
And designated officers also have another 14 days?
So designated officer actually has to, so once you submit the appeal, they have to acknowledge that they received your appeal, the designated officer, within 3 days, right? And then since the receipt of the appeal, within 3 weeks, the designated officer should give their decision to you as to whether or not they will provide you the information.
Okay. And will they give reasons if they...
Yes. So it's actually mandatory that both the information officer and the designated officer cite reasons if they are rejecting your request. If they decide not to give you information which you have requested, they have to cite reasons, because they need to be the reasons has to be reasons that are under section 5 of the RT Act, which are exempted information, right? If if that's the case, then both the information officer and the designated officer are obligated to cite reasons. These are the reasons that I'm rejecting your information request.
Okay. I'm again going back to the process where, okay, so if we are hand delivering, that means we need to go to that location and ask for information officer and give it to them, right? Or maybe
Yes.
you can write it to information officer and it will go to them.
Yes.
If it's email, then we'll email general RTI and then they will submit or they will redirect.
Yes. So ideally, the email address and the relevant details are available in their websites of the public authorities. So you can whatever email address they have provided and asked to submit RTI request, you can direct your request to that email address.
So to the particular authority.
It could be to the particular authority. If they have provided the email address of the relevant information officer, then you can obviously direct that to the information specifically.
Specific. Can we send it to the RTI itself, and will RTI refer it to the right department if we don't know where to send it?
RTI in the sense?
Meaning to the RTI commission, or if they have a general RTI email, can we send it to them and they will direct it to the right department?
No, actually. So it's good that you asked this, but this is not the point where the RTI commission come into place, right? Because in this whole RTI process, this is essentially the RTI appeal process as well, right? So the RTI commission comes later in the stage, so they can't, interfere in the first instance itself.
Okay.
So just to reiterate, the citizen submit the right to information request to the information officer of the relevant public authority. If the request is unsatisfied with the decision, appeal to the designated officer of the same relevant public authority. If you are dissatisfied with the decision of the designated officer only, you can make an appeal to the RTI commission. That's where the RTI commission will jump into the process, in this appeal process.
Okay. And we also heard RTI commission is an independent body.
It is, yes.
So they have their own mandate and they sit separately without any interference with ministries and stuff?
Yes, it's an independent commission. So there are 5 members, 5 commissioners, and their main duty and main power is basically to make sure the RTI Act is implemented and also to hear appeals.
Okay. And these commissioners have a duration? Do they change?
Yes, so there is a particular composition, there is a term of office, all that are specifically stipulated in the RTI Act.
And who appoints them?
So the commissioners to the RTI Commission are appointed by the President upon the recommendations of the Constitutional Council.
Okay. And so appeal process, again, it goes that where you give appeal and they consider, or is it something like how it happens in courts where you have to go and they will have a discussion with you?
So when you submit the appeal to the RTI Commission, they will obviously consider and they will get back to you within 30 days. That's how the Act specifies a timeline for the RTI Commission. They have to get back and they have to either affirm or vary or defer the decision of the designated officer, right? So that's actually interesting because the RTI Commission also, like I said, can hear appeals like the court does. So they will have, so once your appeal gets registered within the RTI Commission as an appeal, you will be called, both the requester, who will then become the appellant, and the public authority, both parties will be called before the commission for appeal hearings. And it can, the process will go on depending on how the public authority makes their submissions and whether they instantly agree to give the information, or if they reject, they will be coming back with reasons as to why they are rejecting this application and why they are refusing to give information. So it's a back and forth process.
Okay.
Yes.
Will this be handled by a lawyer, or is it something that each party can talk for themselves?
So the law doesn't mandatorily require a lawyer to represent either parties. So the citizen, the requester, can they themselves go before the RTI Commission and represent themselves, unlike in the judicial system, right? So, but most of the time, public authorities, they actually have legal officers, so they would come before the commission and make submissions. But it doesn't restrict the citizen, the requester, from, having a legal representative, bringing in a lawyer to represent themselves. You are free to do so.
Oh, that's interesting. I think many of us wouldn't know that it actually goes to appeal
Yes.
process, like how it happens in courts. I also want to ask another question that on language, right? So can this RTI can be used in all three language, and how the information we receive can be in the language of our native language? How does that work?
So the language, you can access the information in your preferred language. That is also something that should go into the RTI request form, the application that I mentioned earlier. So you need to specify which language you seek information on, right? So if the public authority, so let's say I am requesting information in English language, and if the public authority doesn't have the same information in English language but in Sinhala, which is the original language they have the information on, they are bound to give that information. They will not essentially reject your application, citing that, sorry, we don't have the information you are seeking in English language. But if they have it in Sinhala or Tamil, they can provide it.
Okay.
So the thing is, they are not bound to sort of translate and give you the information, but if they have the original information in either language, they will have to provide you that information.
Okay. And if you look at it other way around, think like when I'm writing my application and I'm writing it in either Sinhalese or Tamil, and maybe the public authority is not in the same language, then what happens?
There's nothing that restricts you from sort of sticking to one language just because the public authorities function and their day-to-day operations are done in a specific language. You can submit your request in either three languages, and the public authority, then the burden is on the public authority to sort of provide the necessary information and have it translated or do the needful from their end if the request is not in their native language.
And so from the information that we ask, I don't know, from your experience, you can say, can you give an example? What's the information that you might have seen or maybe heard, like which is the smallest information that someone has got, and maybe something that the largest or the biggest information that someone has got, like maybe by numbers, I'm saying.
So like I said, TSL, my organization, we also submit RTI applications as an organization, as well as supporting clients. We do file RTI request on clients' behalf, right? So we actually, in my experience at least, we actually use RTI as an advocacy tool, as a strategic advocacy tool to get certain information, which in turn supports us with the research that we are doing, with litigation, where we file court cases. So scale-wise, we have had, smaller scale information that we have received, again, bigger ones as well, like major information that had supported us so much for our court cases. So the scale could be either, but based on my experience, what I would suggest is that for you to try, for our viewers to try, it's a really good tool, like ranging from, let's say, if you want to know about, when I first started the podcast today, I mentioned, if you want to know about an application that you have submitted to get a permit or a license, so it could be that. It could be an information which could be in the custody of the public authority, but it benefits you, right? But you can also seek information which can benefit the whole public, right? So that is what we call public interest, where you file right to information applications on behalf of the public, for the public interest. And as TISL, our organization, almost all the RTIs that we file are for the public interest, right? It's not for any of our personal benefits, right? So that's actually provided for in the law, even though certain information are exempted within the law. But if the public interest sort of outweighs that harm, right? Outweighs the harm where that information is disclosed, then the authorities, the information officer, the designated officer, or even if it goes into the appeal process, the authorities must ensure that if the public interest outweighs the harm that it could cause by disclosing, then they should prioritize public interest, right? So there have been so many decisions, RTI Commission decisions, and then so the last stage in the appeal process is the Court of Appeal. So there have been Court of Appeal judgments as well, where they have given decisions, they have given orders, which highlights public interest aspect of this. So if you look at the scale, to answer your question actually, if you look at the scale of information, it could be something that personally benefits you, right, for something that you want to do with that information, or it could be larger as public interest, right? So that is where I would suggest investigative journalists, media personnel, researchers to use this RTI as an advocacy tool that could support their research, reporting for journalists especially. Um, it's actually a really good tool to use. I would suggest that everyone do give it a try and use RTI.
Okay. So since you mentioned about the public interest and and you're also coming from transparency as well, so corruption has been something that we have been talking a lot, and so how do you think, as you said, like there is this fine line where there might be cases where they also give this information because it's public interest is high. So can you give us some pointers on what kind of issues or what kind of things that public can actually seek on, maybe on corruption, or maybe on things which we not maybe we always think right in the mind, because of course and suddenly when you think, okay, what you can ask RTI, probably people will more ask on like a very direct information, like maybe what happened in last 5 years, where is this file is located, or maybe this is where this tender is going. But that's just more direct information. But can you also give the viewers how more exclusive they can be on this application if they want to do for a public interest?
Sure. So I could give you an example. I'm sure you know about the substandard procurement of substandard low quality drugs that were procured in during few years back, right? So it's an ongoing court case actually, but certain information that we wanted before filing this case, we actually got them through RTIs. We RTI'd the relevant authorities and we basically fact checked. This is a tool to fact check as well, right? So you can get to know about some information through news articles, just hearsay, it could be anything. But if you want to verify and fact check these information, RTI is the tool for you, right? So we actually used RTI to get certain information before we proceeded with filing a court case, right? So that is actually requested in public interest. The RTIs were requested in public interest, and the court case was filed on behalf of the public. It was a public interest litigation case. So that's the extent that you can go to by using this simple tool, RTI.
Okay. So I also want to know that the RTI application itself will give you different avenues to explore with, right? So how can a person, a young person who wants to make use of that RTI for their localities or the issues they face in their community, how they can just start with if you can give them some ideas that how they can actually make use of it for the public interest?
Sure. So if I take an example, let's say that you want to know about your land registration process, right? You can just simply submit an RTI application. But when you reframe the question, it shouldn't be like, why is my land registration delayed? It can't be just that, because they could give any reasons. So instead, you can reframe the question to say, please provide certified copies of the file which handles my application, land registration application submitted on this and so date, and in details regarding the officers who are handling my case, something like that. Like it could be 1, 2, 3, 4 questions listed instead of one big question. So that's how you can strategically draft your RTI response, right? So that is something that you can use RTI for to know about your land registration application. And also then let's say there is a road being constructed in your locality, in your neighborhood. Only a part of the road is being constructed. The rest is just left out, right? And you want to know why. Only a specific part of the road is constructed, but the rest is just abandoned. So you can submit an RTN application to maybe the road development authority or the relevant municipal council or whichever the authority that handles this, right? And ask for details. Mention the date, the place, the exact location, and mention basically request information as to why this road construction project has halted, right? You can ask for information like who the constructor is, how much the allocation is, how many funds have been allocated for this construction of this road, and from which point to which point was the project initially planned for, but if only a certain portion is constructed, what happened to the remaining funds, things like that, right? And this is exactly how you can uncover certain corrupt activities, right? This is how you can uncover corruption. And whatever information that you get through this RTI request are basically evidence that you can support if you plan to lodge a complaint with the police or with any other authority, right? So these information, because they will be good enough evidence because they are submitted by the relevant public authority. And this is also why I said it's best if you can ask for certified copies of documents. They will be authenticating that document when they provide that information to you, right? So that's how you can use this information which are provided by the public authority to support your next step, basically.
Okay, that's actually good to know. So what if the information what we are asking is not clear, or maybe what if the information is not, the question is not complete, and do you think information officer will come back to us and asking for clarification, or they will simply reject it and we have to reapply again?
So in practical experiences, it's highly unlikely the public authority, the information officer, would come back to you saying your request is too vague, I can't properly gauge what you're asking for. It's highly unlikely, right? And it's not their duty either. They're not obliged to do that. So that's why I suggested earlier on in the podcast that you should be very specific and you should be very clear as to what the information you want to get are, right? It doesn't need to be technical. Like I said, you don't need to include legal terms, legal jargons, or technical terms. It could be very simple and easily comprehensible, right? As long as you know what information you want, and if you can put it into words in simple language, that's what matters. Right?
Okay.
And that will eliminate the chances of the public authority refusing your request or giving you incomplete answers. That's how you can make sure that it doesn't happen from your end.
And I can also ask information not only from my city, it can be from anywhere in Sri Lanka.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
you can ask anything happening in Anuradhapura to
Yes,
Kandy.
absolutely. As long as you direct your right to information request to the relevant authority. So identifying the authority is also essential here, right? You can, you may actually accidentally RTI to the wrong authority because of lack of knowledge, but then that would be, so they can get back to you and say we don't hold this information. Then you will have to start the process from scratch. So in order to eliminate these risks, what I would suggest is, like I said earlier, you need to do your research, right? Basically, identify what information you want to know, and also identify which public authority you should direct this to.
Right. I think yesterday, from the previous podcast also, what we discussed was how everyone should be informed and active citizen.
Yes,
I think that's
absolutely.
very much coming to the line that you need to know how do you do it than just thinking about doing it.
Exactly.
So I think that's a good point. So what about the informations what we ask? And when I asked also about information, it can be larger in size. Think like I have asked something, a tender notice or something, a document which probably can be 200, 300 page. Will I receive it like a printed copy of 300 page?
So interestingly, there's no fee for you to make a request. That is a golden rule, right? You don't need to pay any amount to submit a right to information request. But once the information officer or the designated officer, when the public authority gets back to you with their decision to provide information, that means they have accepted your request, right? When they get back to you with the decision to provide information, a fee may be applicable, right? So they have to indicate that in their response as well. And that fee depends on the information you ask for. Like you said, if it's a 200, 300 page document and you have asked for certified copies in printed form, then of course it'll cost a lot, right? So to make sure these fees are transparent, the Right to Information Commission has introduced a schedule, a fee schedule, which is available in the RTI Commission website, where they lays down, where they stipulates the amounts, exact amounts, for photocopying, for printing, for all sorts of different modes of information, right? So that is, I would suggest you go into the RTI Commission website and have a look at this fee schedule as well. In addition, I would like to add that the information you request need not essentially be in printed format or photocopied, right? You can even ask to go to the public authority and examine certain information. You can even ask for an extraction of a big piece of information. So let's say the 200-page document, you only need a small fraction of information in 2 pages. You can ask for those 2 pages only. You don't need to ask for the 200-page whole document, right?
But what if I don't know where that 2 page lies in the 200-page document?
If that's the case, then of course you will have to, I mean, if you are willing to pay for the 200-page document, then you will obviously have to. If not, maybe you can first ask to go and examine the document and then figure out which pages contain the information you are seeking for. Let's say it's from page 50 to 60, 10 pages. Then after examining, you can request to get a photocopy of those specific pages.
Okay, so the relevant authority can ask you to come and see the
Yes.
document, and then you can also choose these are the information I want to extract from that.
So that is also provided for in the RTI request format that I mentioned earlier. So I suggest the viewers to actually go and have a look at the RTI format, even though it's not mandatory to follow the same template, but the requested information in that format needs to be filled out and submitted, right? So that is also one section where they ask how you want to access this information by requesting a certified copy, printed forms, even in a pen drive, a CD, things like that.
Okay. So just knowing about the prices, of course, we have asked the viewers to go and check, but do you have some prices in your mind?
So it's, like I said, it's a lengthy schedule, but the first 4 A4 pages are free.
Okay.
Right? So if it's just 4 A4 pages, you can get that for free from the public authority.
So rest, it can be CD, it can be also pen drive.
Yes. So there are separate amounts for each mode of information. So if it's printed format, it could be a certain amount. If it's for a pen drive, and if the citizen is providing the pen drive, the cost will be less. If you are expecting the public authority to provide the pen drive, it will be more. So all those things are captured in this particular fee schedule that I mentioned.
And all this process is also can be everything online, right? So that means it can be email and I get a reply in email, then I also get the documents in soft copy. That can also fully happen.
Yes. So whatever information that you want to get through an email, it's also absolutely free because there's no cost, right? So even if it's a 200-page document, if the public authority has it in soft copy mode, if they can email it to you, then it's free.
Okay, that's good to know. So I think then that comes to a question of RTI itself as a tool, that what we discussed, and I think today we discussed about the entire process in detail, about how do you apply, where do you start, what's your limitations or expectations before you start. Then we also spoke about where it goes, what happens, and what kind of other means you can get. And there are also small details that often we miss about RTI is something that we discussed today. So as a last key takeaway, of course we spoke a lot, but if somebody is just listening into this, who just wants to know, okay, there's few things that I just need to do for my RT applications to be very successful. What are the key things they should have?
So I would suggest, I think I kept mentioning this throughout, I would suggest that you basically identify first what information you want to seek, right? Specific information, the timeline, and you need to be very specific when you're drafting the RTI form as well, the request as well. And also, I would suggest you do your research and check which authority you should direct this to, right? So again, for an example, if you want to get certain information about a procurement process, you should ideally send it to the relevant, let's say it's a health related drug procurement related issue that you want to get information on, then it could be directed to the Ministry of Health or the National Medicines Regulatory Authority, likewise, right? Let's say if it's about a draft law that you want to get information on, then it could go to the Ministry of Justice. So, and then if you want to get some information about school admissions, it should be directed to the Ministry of Education. But let's say if you want to know about school admissions and you accidentally direct it to the Ministry of Health, then that won't work. Then it's obvious that your request would be rejected, right? So in order to eliminate these risks, it's important that you take the time and ensure that your information request is in order and it is directed to the relevant appropriate proper public authority, right? And also, as a last message, I would like to highlight that this RTI tool it's a citizen's right. Okay, you're entitled to it. You need to use it, and don't feel intimidated because it comes from a law and there's a process and there's a commission. I mean, sure, it may feel like it's a big deal. I mean, it is a big deal, but then again, this is also your right. You need to exercise it, right? And also, it's not us, the requesters, versus the public authority. It's not us against them, right? This is simply an information sharing, a coordinated effort, right? So that needs to be kept in mind. So I would suggest that the viewers don't feel intimidated by this process and start using it. Just give it a try. It won't hurt to try, right? So and especially, I mean, for youth who are watching this, I would suggest using this, right? Because we have actually come across university students using RTI as a tool to get certain information. So we know for a fact that these communities are also using this RTI tool, right? So I would encourage everyone to draft an RTI request and start and keep using this tool.
Okay. So actually, I wanted to ask that as my last question.
Sure.
I want to know what's the message you want to tell about RTI. So it's glad that you mentioned about it. So thank you so much for joining us and also explaining about the process. So yeah, we are just end of our second podcast series. We have one more left, which will be also talking about RTI, but it's also more wholesome about RTI, the 360, and also about what other things intersects with RTI, and we might also take a look at a case and also dissect more on RTI as well. So I'll join you guys again on the podcast series 3 on RTI. Thank you.